There are several rules that determine the way the game of cricket is played, and now the ICC, and these rules keep on changing, these rules keep on evolving, and in the process of evolution, the ICC has now made two key changes to two of the existing rules in the ICC rule book. What are these two big rule changes that will change the way that the game is played? We'll tell you that in this particular video, so stick along with us as we tell you about these two rule changes. One to do with the way the stumping DRS is taken, the other to do with the way concussions and concussion substitutes are brought into the field. So all of that put together, couple of rule changes being made by the ICC. We're going to tell you about exactly what those changes are. First, let's start about the change in DRS rules. Now, umpires henceforth will only assess the side-on replays for stumping without considering the caught behind scenario. Now, just to break it down as to what this means, when as a fielding side you're appealing for a stumping, then what happens at the moment is that the third umpire also checks for an outside or an inside edge, let's say. But that will no longer be the case, and that acts as a benefit for the fielding side, because you may have asked for a DRS or for a review of just the stumping or the act of stumping, but that acts as a bonus, because then the edge, and we've seen that happen. Let's take for example Alex Carey. He was very smart in the India-Australia Border Gavaskar Trophy, which took place a couple of months back. He was very clever in the way that he was taking everything that he would stump. He would then go ahead and ask for a review, and what would happen in the process, the edges would also get checked. Now that acts as a bonus, that acts as a bit of an advantage for the fielding side, but that will no longer be the case. Only and only the side on will be checked when you're looking for stumping. No edges will now be checked by the third umpire. What this also means is that doesn't mean that you can't check for an edge. You can continue to check for an edge, but you will then have to take another review. You will have to ask for a separate DRS if you want to check for the outside edge. You can't just kill two birds with one stone. You need to be asking for a second review. You need to be exhausting that particular review that you may have as a fielding side. It won't just happen by default, as has been the case till now. Now the appeal for stumping will only display images from the side on camera. So even as a broadcaster, the broadcaster will only be showing you those images of side on. Anything to do with the edges will no longer be taken into consideration. So if you're the fielding side, if you think there's an edge, then you have to take a separate DRS. Don't expect it to be checked by the third umpire when you're appealing for stumping. That's rule change number one. Let's tell you about the second rule change that the ICC has made, and this has to do with the concussion substitute. Of course, concussion substitute, not too long back, we saw this being introduced to the beautiful game of cricket, and for safety concerns of the player. But now you have seen situations where it becomes a very serious matter as well. And just to take things forward, there is an added rule over there when you make a concussion substitute, so that teams don't misuse that particular rule. The idea that these rule changes give you is that this is an attempt to curb that instinct of this rule being misinterpreted or misused in any way possible. Now what will happen going forward is that the substitute player will not be permitted to bowl if they are replaced, or if that player is replaced by a player who was suspended from bowling at the time of concussion. What does that mean? Now if there's a bowler who, for let's say suspect bowling action, or was given enough warnings for walking into the danger zone, was suspended for some particular reason or the other, these two being the more prominent ones, let's say, that we see in our game. Now if a player who then later gets concussed was given these warnings or was then barred from bowling in that particular match, the player replacing that particular player will also not be allowed to bowl. That is the new rule change. Until now, the player coming in, regardless of such warnings, could go ahead and bowl, and that obviously changes the overall equation then, and it makes it an uneven contest, but no longer will that be the case. So these two rule changes happening, and they've happened already. It is already come into play, and teams no longer can play around the rules or expect them to not use their DRS and still get their edges checked, or have a bowler bowl when the other player who was substituted was then suspended. Those rule changes have been done away with, and now you will have to play the game given these new rule changes which have already come into effect. Let me know your thoughts about these rule changes in the comment section.